Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Mira, who has joined us all the way from yesterday, Sunday, in the States, North Carolina. Hello, Mira, how are you?
Hello tomorrow.
It's a bit like an Adele song, isn't it? Hello from the other side.
Yeah, that's right. All the way on the other side of the world.
And isn't it nice to be able to have these conversations so easily these days compared
It,
to, 10 years ago?
it's kind of amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
I still have my mind blown every time. But we're not here to talk today about the ability to connect remotely. What we are going to talk about today is a topic that is near and dear to your heart and something that you're an absolute expert in. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit around where did you come from and where are you going?
Yes. So I was born in Romania, actually. Came to the United States when I was 6 years old, and took a long time to get to learn the language. And when I started my first career, which was as a counselor, I thought I knew everything that I needed to have to be successful. I had the language down and I had a degree. And I thought, okay, I am going to be the best counselor I'm ever going to be in this situation. It was a school, right? A lot of complex situations, and I was going to rule the world as a counselor. Well, unfortunately, what I didn't realize was just because I knew the language and I knew how to help children, doesn't mean that I was going to be successful in my role, because I was an entire system where parents had ideas for what was best for their children, and teachers had their own ideas, and principals had their own ideas, and the school district, and on and on. It was an entire ecosystem that I had no idea I really needed to know in order to navigate it. And what happened was I made a number of really painful mistakes. That was all about me not understanding the politics and the culture.
Yes.
And I told myself, that's it. I'm never, ever, ever going to work for another large bureaucratic system ever again. I went back to school and I got my PhD in clinical psychology. And somehow I ended up working for one of the largest, most bureaucratic systems in the US.
Famous
and
last
I thought,
words.
how did I end up here? But everything was different. And it was because I ended up having this amazing mentor who took me under his wing and helped me understand that I'm not living in a vacuum. I'm not working in a vacuum all by myself. There are other people around me. There's other systems. And I needed to know that in order to be successful. And by him elucidating that, I ended up having kind of the most amazing leadership career. I had never expected to be a leader, but it catapulted me for the next 10 years in larger and larger leadership roles and responsibilities nationally. And I ended up becoming really passionate about sharing what I learned with other people, and especially with women, because along the way, I kept having women come to me and say, how did you develop this career? And how did you navigate the system? And how do I push past this barrier? How do I get noticed? And how do I get this thing approved? And I, ended up mentoring quite a number of people, opened up a women's leadership development company, and wrote this book, Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics, with my co-author, who's an expert in millennials, specifically so that I could share it with as many people as I can, and especially women and those who don't have access to this information. So that's how I got here to where I am today.
I love that. And of course, if you haven't guessed, we are going to be talking about workplace politics. And as you mentioned, how do you actually navigate the system? How do you position yourself in a way that's influential while also being aware of the micro and macro ecosystems that exist in the workplace, which sometimes aren't as obvious as we would like to think that they are. And full disclosure here, I'm someone that never understood workplace politics and also never cared to get involved in the workplace politics, particularly from that perspective where, there's a bit of infighting and the clickiness. That was never my game. But I think what would be really great to talk about today is around, workplace politics, but also influence, and influence for good, not for evil.
Yes.
So you mentioned around your mentor who, lifted the hood, or, moved the screen to the side. What do you think was one of the most valuable lessons that you learned from your mentor back then? When was it like, oh my goodness, okay, actually I'm part of a much bigger thing than just me and my team and my work program?
Yeah, it's really funny because I could totally relate. I was exactly the same as you and many, many women. Like, this is disgusting. I don't want any part of workplace politics stuff. It's dirty. It's ugly. It's gossiping. It's undermining. It's sabotaging. And that's not me, right? I have integrity. I'm an honest person. Please don't drag me into any of that, right? So what I ended up, I guess, learning as one of the most important things is it doesn't have to be about any of that stuff. So if you think about it, if you learn who you include when decisions are made, if you learn, how to drive results in a way that isn't just all about you, but includes people and elevates people and protects people from sort of other people taking credit and things like that, you actually can end up elevating not just your own career, but everyone else's around you who are maybe leaning on you, and really make a much broader difference in the organization in a healthier way, and create like a healthy work environment. And I had never really known that because I had been kind of, experiencing, like most people, the negative end of that. But I had a mentor who really understood how to do this with integrity and honesty. So I often think about, like, politics itself is not a dirty word. It's how it's used that can be dirty, but it could also be used in very positive, honest ways.
I love that. And I think you touched on a really valid point there around who you should include. And I think historically we're like, okay, who are the main stakeholders? Who's going to be impacted? But what have you found outside of, including, yes, stakeholders, very important, but does it extend further than that when we're thinking about workplace politics and relationships in a larger scale?
Yeah. So if I were to sort of put a framework on how I think about workplace politics, right?
I love a framework, yes.
Oh, yes. It would be three things, okay? So the first is understanding emotional intelligence and developing very high, strong emotional intelligence, okay?
Yeah.
The second is understanding how systems work, so systems level thinking. And the third is what it takes to drive results.
Yes.
Now, you could have somebody who is very emotionally intelligent, right? Understands a system and knows how to drive results, but they do it for their own personal gain. That's all, right? And that means they're going to abuse power. They're going to abuse other people along the way. They're going to step on people, and they're going to know how to do it in very conniving ways because they're really emotionally intelligent and they know who to step on.
Right.
That's not what I'm advocating, right? Instead, if you apply it in a way that you're thinking, okay, I am going to think about what I'm bringing to the table. I'm going to make sure I'm not escalating a problem, not creating conflict. I'm going to make sure I understand the people who are at the table with me and meeting them where they are, and bringing them in on it. That's using emotional intelligence in a positive way. I'm going to understand who to include, and that they'll be hurt if they're not included, right? That's the systems. And then I'm going to ask, like, how are things measured in this organization? What do people value in this organization? And, how can we sort of change some of the things that are, how they're valued and how they're measured in order to drive bigger and better results. Well, now I'm thinking in a really positive, honest way, and I'm including my team, and I'm including my boss, who's not going to be like sort of left behind or blindsided. So it's just using the same three things, the same framework, but in really sort of thoughtful, careful, human ways, I guess.
Yeah. Sounds like rather than just going into a situation, with all of the solutions, it's going, okay, well, how can I have the best and biggest impact in terms of people, as well as results, as well as for the overall organization, to making sure it's aligned with the strategy as well. I love that. So tell me a little bit more around, I guess, what do you see as some of the biggest traps that are still happening today? We talked just before I hit record around the boys club that we hope doesn't exist, but in some industries and in some sectors it certainly does. What are you still seeing that you're like, why have we not got a solution to this, or why is this still going on?
Yeah, well, you mentioned one, right? So when people are focused on just their personal careers instead of what's good for the entire organization, they will start doing things like meeting in private, instead of including people. And what we were talking about before we got started on the show is you're saying, like, for you it's folks coming together around rugby, and that's usually men. For us, it's going golfing, which usually is kind of a guys club, or going out after dinner when a lot of women, it's harder for women with families. It's harder for men with families too, to make it to these. So there's a select few that end up having the kind of flexibility to join these sort of quote unquote private meetings or behind closed doors or that kind of thing. So that still goes on. And it's really maddening, because you get to a meeting thinking you're going to be like productive and have like a great meeting, but the decisions were already made somewhere, sometime. And it's like absolutely maddening, right? And you're like, wait a second, we haven't even started the conversation, and decisions have already been made. So, I think these days, however, millennials and, even the newer generation after that, the Gen Zs, they are not having this. They're not like, I'm not playing this game. I am here to make a difference. I'm here to work for a company that helps me feel like I'm doing something meaningful and making an impact. And they're bringing something new to organizations, and that is an expectation that their leaders are going to be better leaders. Right? And how can they be better leaders? They're going to be much more inclusive. And if you're going to be more inclusive, then you're going to need to change the game when it comes to politics.
Love it. So can we backtrack slightly? When we're talking millennials and Gen Z, are you able to just put the $1 million question, right? Are you able to just put a time frame around how you what's the word I'm looking for? How do you define who's millennial and who's Gen Z?
Yes. So right now, if I recall, it's age 26 to 40 is millennials.
Yep.
And Gen Z is younger than 26.
Younger than 26. All right, we'll put that in there. And I love what you said around they're not standing for it anymore, because something that I talk about with my leaders and with my organizations is this whole idea of the standard you walk past is the standard that you accept. And I think if we're looking at that age bracket, a number of and I heard this term the other day, which was terrifying and awful, was the geriatric millennials.
That makes me feel really old.
I read it and I was like, oh gosh, someone's gone, a Gen Z must have said that. But if we're thinking about that, the top end of the millennials, now they're coming into a time in their career where they're becoming more and more influential, if we're looking at the way that a normal career trajectory would travel. And I love that we're talking about, how do you be a better leader? How do you have more meaningful connections and impact, and also making sure that it's inclusive for your team as well? What do you think would be the first step for some of these people in a position of influence? How can they stamp this out, whether it's with peers or whether it's within their own team? What do you think they need to be focusing on first?
Yeah, so I say this a lot, but honestly, it sounds very basic, but know where you stop and someone else starts. Meaning,
ooh, yes,
know what you are bringing into a conversation. What part of this is you, and what part of this is someone else's stuff. If you can understand that much, which actually takes a lot of learning about yourself and about other people, the impact that you can make is actually pretty large. One of the greatest challenges right now for leaders coming up is this sort of de-escalation or cooling down of conflict. People have less tolerance right now for all things because we're all stressed out, we're all burned out, we're losing our cool all the time, right? And we need leaders who can help us keep calm and stable and feel like we could just focus on our work. And that kind of leader is someone who is extraordinarily self-aware and aware of the people around them and understand them well enough.
Yeah.
So it sounds simple, but that's where I would start is that self-awareness in order to be effective at knowing what to communicate to whom and when.
I love it. I totally agree with you. I call that the lighthouse leaders. So the leaders that really need to be thinking around, all of the crazy crashing around them, and, perhaps there's turmoil going on and the waves are coming in, but they really need to be the lighthouse that have got that strong foundation. They're shining that beacon of light, that guiding light, saying, actually, we're going in this direction. Here's how we're going to do it. And I'm safe. You're safe in my hands as well. And I think that you're absolutely right. And it always comes back to the people part of leadership, doesn't it? Not so much the driving the results and the systems, but actually, at the crux of it, what are the people and how do we need to look after them in this journey as well?
That's right. And that also helps you give better feedback. Feedback is one of the hardest things that most leaders have trouble with. And if you are able to develop the right kind of relationships where people trust that you're going to give them good feedback, then they'll trust when you're able to sort of stop unhealthy behaviors and say, this is not acceptable.
Yep.
This is what I want to see instead.
Yep.
And I believe that you can do it. And I'll continue watching for it to make sure that you're able to do that. So holding people accountable too, right?
Yeah.
That's around like shaping the politics as well. Once you're getting into that position, and you're right, like millennials at that age are in that position to be able to start being able to do that and shape the culture of their organization.
How much do you think, just on the topic of culture, how much do you think culture dictates politics or politics dictates culture, or are they separate?
Oh, that is a good question. Ooh. Well, now
we didn't prepare this one, folks. So
no, none of this. But now I want to know what you think about it. I'm going to share what I think, but then I want to know what you think about it.
Okay, all right.
It's such a good question. I think it's both. I think they are they interact. I think the history of an organization dictates culture, which dictates politics. And it takes some level of politics changing in order to change the culture, in order to move past the history that is negative.
Yes, I agree. I think that that they're quite interlinked, whereas I think of culture as being the way that we operate, and I think of politics more around the way that we make decisions. So if you've got a culture of we're open, honest, collaborative, then you're probably going to have politics in the workplace that are less confrontational and have less of that, the cliques and the private meetings. However, if we're saying we've got a culture of collaboration and honesty and integrity and all of those types of things, but no one's calling out the behavior that's not happening as a result of the politics, then I think that culture probably doesn't infiltrate all areas of the organization.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
We'll have to riff on this another time, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Afterwards, we could go deep, go deep and wide with this one. Oh my goodness. All right. So let's just go back to when we were talking around how politics can be like dirty, they can be ugly, it can be gossip. Say you're brand new to an organization, you've joined a team for whatever reason, it's your area of expertise. You've got a history of being a brilliant leader in the past, but you walk in and what was on the culture wall, on the vision and mission and values on the poster doesn't match the experience in terms of politics, because it is ugly, it is gossipy. Do we exit, or what are the steps to make some decisions or to make some of that change?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So if you're already in a leadership position, then the first step, I think, is just spending enough time to gather the information about where all of this other stuff is coming from, given the fact that the culture, the mission, the vision says one thing, but everybody's doing something different. Yeah. So spending time gathering that information, doing an environmental scan, where did this come from? Who has the actual power? Is it people in the actual positions of leadership, or are there other people who are influencing in some way? They have some informal power, and it's influencing. And that's where you got like the saboteurs, and the underminers, and people who are trying to grab power, even if they might not have a position, right? The people whispering in other leaders' ears that shouldn't be heard so loudly, right? All of these things are important to gather, and just talking to each individual person that you can in the organization gives you some of that. You start learning the trends. Yep. The next step would be just being able to start with your own team, right? I always think about who is in your sphere of influence right now. Yep. And trying to sort of move the needle slowly to get a larger and larger sphere of influence. So start with the team that is within your sphere of influence and saying, if this is the mission and vision, we're going to carry it out. And if you have trouble, let me know, and I will help advocate for you. I will sponsor you in this. I will champion, I will support, I will block the things that are getting in the way, and working together, I would also be speaking with my own leaders, right? Like, tell me more about, what you're seeing and why some people seem to not be following the vision and mission. Tell me more about, so just out of like, from a place of curiosity, I'd like to learn more. Yeah. Then building enough trust and developing enough relationships that you can start speaking up and sharing how you feel and how you think about these things, right? As a leader, you have a distinct ability and role that many other people who are not in a leadership position to be able to influence things around you, and sometimes more than you actually realize. So it's about sort of evaluating, who have I learned that I can trust to speak up with and start sharing? Who are my mentors that I can sort of work through some of this? And what you're doing along the way is developing kind of a informal board of directors and stakeholders who believe in you, who can really help amplify the concerns that you have or the change that you'd like to see over time, and trying to sort of gather enough of those people who will help you make that change at a broader level.
Yeah, I love that. And especially that board of directors. And I think we don't actively pursue and build that enough.
Mm-hmm.
But the payoff is, is tenfold, perhaps even more, is actually having people and collecting them along the way that you trust, that will have your back and you will have theirs as well. Yep, so instrumental.
Right. It's it's networking, but networking sometimes we network and we think, oh, I'm just building some relationships, I'm just making friends, but some of the people that you can network with can really help you and support you in much bigger ways if you asked. If you just asked, hey, I'm trying to make a difference here. Will you join me? And will you help me? In this meeting, can you help me? When I say this, can you also speak up as well? And when I share concern about this, will you help me by sharing it with others and seeing if others can also join in these concerns so that, we can be heard a little bit more? You could use your network in lots of ways that right now, many women are underutilizing their network when they could be a lot more powerful together.
Oh, this is a whole nother conversation about asking for help, right? But
we
won't get into that. But I think the key takeaway there for me is actually ask for what you want. And in the process of, building those relationships and building that rapport, be like, hey, it would be great is if you could do this, that would really help me out. And I think naturally people want to help others when they ask for help. We just don't ever do it.
We don't. Asking for help, I think for many people, regardless of gender, is a hard thing because it requires you to let go of this need to be invulnerable. And Patrick Lencioni said this well when he talked about team development. He's the author of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? And he said, like, the greatest difficulty that leaders have is their need to be invulnerable. And if they can get past that, like, trust is the first step. And in order to build trust, you build helping relationships. That means you've got to ask for help. And that does require some level of being just a little bit vulnerable in order to say, hey, I kind of need some feedback. I kind of need some help. But it's amazing how much stronger you can get by just asking for that help and being able to join with somebody else and working towards a goal.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. Oh, yes, such a good lesson. Ask for help, folks. If you're wondering what your next first step is, ask for help. So on that note, your top 5 tips for leaders, fire away.
Okay, top 5 tips. So my first is moving from setting inflexible goals to a set of continuous improvement. So what I mean by that is learning, like, what can I try and learn in order to keep growing and adjust and adapt in today's times. An adaptable leader is much stronger and will reach much greater goals than one who sets one goal and insists on trying to get there no matter what's happening around them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So continuous improvement, having a state of continuous improvement. The second is, I mentioned this a million times now, learn about yourself and learn about your team beyond the surface level stuff. What makes me tick? What makes you tick? What makes that person tick? How can I catch it before things get worse? And what is a natural strength for me and each of my team members so that we can complement each other and optimize that to be a much stronger team to reach greater goals.
Love it.
I will say about this, I work with a lot of women, and what I've been learning from the women that I work with is that we're really good at identifying our weaknesses, and we have a lot of trouble identifying our strengths. And I think it's because we might not have as much experience getting feedback about our strengths in the workplace. So it's on us to try to make sure we are identifying, oh, that is a strength for me. I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to identify that. So that's number 2. Number 3, engaging in continuous feedback check-ins.
Love it.
So, and I actually love feed forward even more than feedback. So feed forward, meaning what you're going to do and what you want to enlist help in people watching you to see if you actually achieved what your goal was. So I'm going to try to present this message to this group of people. Tell me if it comes out as I intend. So it's not looking backwards at what I did wrong, but helping me get better by watching me in a specific goal that I have in mind and telling me how much closer and closer I get. So giving and receiving feedback creates greater, stronger organization and people.
Love it.
Number 4, carving out time for personal leadership reflection and team reflection.
Yeah.
Very, very hard to do right now, right? We're all like hair on fire, just trying to put out fires. But one of the most effective ways that you can be more strategic is to set that time aside to reflect, like, how was I doing? Did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish in the way that did I approach this in the way that I wanted to? Did we as a team approach this in the way that we wanted to? Did we resolve conflicts the way we want to? Are we making our decisions the way that we want to? So team and self-reflection. And then finally, number 5 is learning how to navigate complexity and adapt.
Yeah.
We cannot control everything. Even when we're in a leadership role, we have less control sometimes the higher we go in leadership, right? And we're in times of constant change and volatility. So leaders who try to control everything rather than learn how to adapt will end up experiencing more anger, resentment, depression, anxiety, frustration. And so learning how to adapt continuously will give you a much greater sense actually of control, right? And feel more emotional stability and strength to calm yourself, to calm your team, to be thinking strategically as you're sort of managing how to adapt. It's not easy, but this, I think, is our greatest leadership challenge and opportunity.
Ooh, I think it is. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the hardest, but give us the most bang for buck. I love that. So the first one was around setting flexible goals around that continuous state of improvement. So is that following the Kaizen method?
Similar, yeah. I think about Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, all of those kinds of systems, yes.
Yeah. Learning about yourself, and you are preaching to converted there. I think that's one of the most valuable things that a leader can do is going, actually, what am I about, and what does make me tick? What am I good at? Engaging in continuous feedback and feed forward. I've never heard the term feed forward. I love that as an idea for that improvement, but in real time. And carving out personal time. And I think this is so important as well, to reflect on both your own leadership as well as the team, and then navigating the ability and complexity to adapt and evolve and respond, dare we say pivot, we better not, around all of those changing circumstances, because the things that we think we're in control of, we aren't necessarily always in control of. And you know what, just holding those things lightly as well. We don't need to be white knuckling it either. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for our chat today, Mira. Now, before I hit record, you mentioned you've got some great resources for our listeners as well.
Yeah. And thank you. It's been super fun. If anyone is interested in the Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics, it's up on Amazon. Look it up. A lot of the things that I talked about are from that book. I'm also starting to develop a small group leadership cohort program, helping leaders develop many of these skills together, and I will be opening up that soon. So if you are interested in receiving up-to-date information about that leadership cohort, you can go to my website, brancuassociates.com. Or you can also find me on LinkedIn and social media, other social media at Mira Brancu. And lots of goodies as part of that program. So if you're interested, the moment it ends up being released, we will share what you can get if you're one of the first people in that cohort.
Amazing. Thank you. That's very generous. And I'll pop all the links in the show notes to those as well.
Thanks.
Any last words? Comments?
No, just wanted to thank you. This was so fun. And I learned things too from you. It was a great conversation about culture and politics, which comes first. Really great time. Yes.
We went a little bit all over the place, but we got there in the end. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.